I think the best way to describe the Nintendo Wii is to say it had a small amount of amazing games. The games worth playing were fantastic, and in some cases we'll never see anything like them again, but there weren't many. I own 12 Wii games, 11 of which are the best games on the system, the other is Rayman, Raving, Rabbids. I think motion controls are the only valuable and important change to console video game controls since Sony finalized the design of the DualShock. So we're going to go through all 12 of my games, look at how they implemented motion, and judge them on whether the motion controls add something, add nothing, or actively hurt them. We're going to start with the games based around melee combat, so MadWorld is up first. MadWorld is an ultra-violent beat-em-up high score chaser. Come on, this game's been like $4 for 7 years, you've played it. Motion controls in the game perform some of your attacks. Waggle and Jack does a stun attack. Waggle while holding someone and he throws them. Swipe horizontal while revving the chainsaw and Jack swipes horizontal, swipe vertical for vertical. I've never had any issues with the game discerning the two. In most games I've played, the standard remote sensor is at least good enough to distinguish violent uppercut from violent right hook. God forbid a game tries to make the same distinction with the nunchuck though. In MadWorld a quick waggle will just do a dodge. So easing into things here with a simple implementation of motion controls, does the game gain anything by being on the Wii remote? Not on a purely logical level, but slashing guys in half with a chainsaw does gain a little something from acting it out physically. Does it lose anything? The camera's pretty fucking wonky, so yes, but as for motion specifically, waggling as a stand-in for button presses isn't offensive here, because it's responsive, and since it's involved in several different moves and not just a dedicated attack in itself, it's not tiresome in the same way as Prince of Persia: The Forgotten Sands. This Wii version of the game has nothing to do with the HD console version, and it's a decent cinematic platformer in itself, but the combat in this thing is atrocious. This is why waggle became a derogatory term. You have one attack in this game, and you do it by shaking the remote like you're jacking off Michael J. Fox while he makes a vodka martini. While the prince has all his usual context-sensitive attacks like jumping off walls and enemies, all the actual sword swings are done with a random waggle. While you could say this is the same as having a single attack on the square button, in practice it's so much more aggravating because of the wrist flicking. The Prince of Persia games have always struggled with button mashy combat, but putting that extra physical effort in to do something that I already find inherently boring just adds insult to injury. I know that sounds pathetic, but just sit there and shake your mouse or phone around for 15 seconds for me while you watch this awe-inspiring combat performance. Is your wrist, maybe your forearm, very slightly aching? Like just a tiny bit. Imagine that tiny bit every time you fight something. I don't know how hard people tend to waggle, but I do it fairly roughly just to ensure it registers. Which of course is a critique in and of itself. You don't know a waggle has registered until you see it play out on screen, whereas a button press is a guarantee. I think Forgotten Sands shows why waggle became a dirty word, even as MadWorld became one of the most beloved games on the system. Waggle can accentuate a game's problems with repetitive inputs, even if it doesn't actually create the problem by itself. On the other hand, Forgotten Sands has a camera system I wish more Wii exclusive third-person games had adopted. Holding the C button will allow you to use the pointer to look around freely, as you do in any of the system's first-person games. This is sadly pretty unique. First-person views, behind-the-back centering, and preset camera positions were as much as you could usually expect. With Prince of Persia's camera system, you actually could use this free camera while still playing the game normally, like a second analog stick. A lot of games had one of these constant on-screen pointers, but the one in Forgotten Sands is pretty extraneous for everything but camera movement. Pointing at platforming obstacles will activate them, but this is as linear as any pop game. A button which automatically activates the next obstacle and deactivates the last one would comprehensively work here just as well as the current system. I wouldn't remove the pointer, the game should keep the camera functionality, but your wrist doesn't always need to be pointing at the screen in this one. You could argue it adds another level of skill to point at the right thing when necessary, but platforming in Pop is about timing, not your ability to aim a cursor. For the record, the platforming is why I own this game. The animations are a bit weak, but otherwise it's another solid Sands of Time style cinematic platformer. Does motion actively hurt the game? Yes. Does it compensate well for being on the Wii control scheme? Yes. Would it have worked perfectly and been better on a standard controller? Yes. On the subject of games with a lot of waggle, No More Heroes was Suda51 getting in with a lightsaber game before LucasArts could. But despite your weapon being a laser sword, there is some restraint here in the controls. I was surprised when I first played this to find it wasn't all waggle control. There's a recognition that not every attack can be motion controlled at this level of complexity, even if the game isn't exactly the deepest. Most attacks are on A and B, with motion coming in for finishing moves, finishing every single enemy in the game, and it's also used for recharging. I like holding the remote up for light attacks and horizontal for heavy ones. This feels really smooth, even better than a toggle or a held button on a standard controller, I reckon. Finishing every single enemy off with a swipe, which can't just be waggled through, it's gotta be horizontal or vertical. It gets a bit old, but the combat overall isn't anything amazing or even all that good, so I wouldn't dock this one for motion control specifically. In fact, it's probably the first net positive. Does the Wii remote add something to what this game is going for? Yeah. So next up is our first MotionPlus controlled game, Red Steel 2, a first-person hack-and-slash shooter hybrid. With MotionPlus's enhanced tracking, your sword slashes are mirrored pretty much one-to-one on screen. The game capitalizes on this by being very boring. It goes all in on that sword gimmick, and if you find that it can't sustain your interest for 8 hours all by itself, nothing else here is going to. It's a very rudimentary hack-and-slash with nowhere near enough enemy variety. If an enemy blocks from one direction, you attack from another. What? Quick time event? What? Your moveset expands throughout the game, but there are never any new motions for your arm. Every move is still a stab or a slash. But the controls have nothing to do with how repetitive this game is. In fact, they make it more bearable solely because absolutely no other good games were ever made that control like this. It's the combat design itself which is rote and rudimentary. It does raise the issue of input delay with motion controls though. Obviously, a slash isn't going to be registered until most of the player's movement is complete, whereas on a standard controller the action can begin as soon as the button is depressed. In practice, all your attacks end up feeling like they have input lag because they don't start at the same time as your real-life swing. The game can distinguish between heavy and light swings, but there's no reason to ever do a light swing. So the game is basically testing your wrist stamina? Like, I guess that's valid, but no gamer is ever going to have trouble there. Red Steel 2 exists to perfect Wii swordplay, and it does. In a vacuum, the controls are as good as they ever need to be. It's the rest of the combat system which lets it down. The game would operate fine on a gamepad, but there wouldn't be anything worthwhile left. Unlike waggling, aiming with the Wii Remote always felt really, really good from day one. All the pinpoint precision of a mouse on a console. Except it's not. I hear this comparison all the time, and it's incorrect. The key difference between Wii pointer aiming and all other forms of aiming is that the player's weapon doesn't have to be aiming at what the camera is pointed at. A mouse is more accurate than a controller, but aiming of the camera and the weapon are still tied to the same movement. On the Wii, you can aim the gun off-center from where the camera is pointing. To make this unique scheme work, pointer controls need a dead zone, where the camera is stationary and only the aiming cursor moves with the player's movements. Aiming can't work like every other console on the Wii, because if you wanted to aim slightly above where the camera is currently positioned, if you tilted the Wii remote upwards, the camera would keep moving until you returned the remote to a neutral position. What we want to be able to do is move the cursor a little to each side to fine-tune our aim without actually shifting the camera and having to compensate for that. With no dead zone, the pointer isn't a pointer, it's just a big joystick with no tension on it, which You know, that'd be a terrible idea. Who would ever do that? Being able to fine-tune your aim so much can result in huge balancing changes compared to games designed with another console in mind. Aim assist isn't needed, and you can assume players are going to be more accurate. If the player can pull off more headshots on Wii, and everything dies in one headshot, then the Wii version will be by far the easiest. When we want to rotate the camera, the cursor is pointed off the screen or near to the edge. The difference here between Wii and another gamepad is again that there's no tension pulling the aim back to a centered position. And most importantly, it takes far longer to move your wrist back to a neutral position than it does to let go of an analog stick. This has massive implications for the kinds of shooter design that can work on the Wii. Shooters which require twitch reflexes don't work because while fine-tuning is enhanced, turning is slowed. So with pointer controls, you're more accurate at hitting things, but slower to aim at them because of the grander motions your wrist has to go through. As for the pointer-controlled games I own, the Metroid Prime games are slow-paced, first-person adventures where combat exists more for the sake of pacing than challenge. With the lock-on aiming, the fine-tuning isn't really needed, and they certainly aren't twitch shooters. They feel nice to control this way because of the one-to-one pointer response, and because they apparently had some whack controls on the GameCube, but it'd be hard to argue much would be lost on a regular twin-stick gamepad. I think we can all agree the nunchuck gimmicks in Prime 3 were the lowest point of any of the control schemes in this video, so thankfully the nunchuck motion was used about as often as Shammy's upload button. Resi 4 also fits quite nicely at first glance. It's certainly not a twitch shooter, and it feels good to easily hit all those headshots that you used to have to line up very carefully on GameCube. But this comes back to what I was saying about balance. I've actually only played Resi 4 on Wii, so I can't make any conclusions about this game specifically, but I've heard it argued that the Wii edition is way too easy compared to others because of the completely different nature of aiming. This isn't the controller the game's difficulty was designed around. Resi 4 has been ported to PC several times, so I'm sure this version isn't the biggest issue in the world anymore. But my observation is that if a different control scheme makes a game more enjoyable because it's so much easier to win, then the developer's intentions for the game's difficulty have objectively been lost, even if your opinion of the game is improved. I realize both of these examples are ports, so if you want a video that goes into crazy depth on the unique capabilities of motion aiming in games designed around it, you need to go watch Lamhoot's video on Modern Warfare Reflex Edition. Like, why are you even still here? He's way smarter and more interesting and funny than me. Go fucking subscribe. As I understand it, some MotionPlus games used the MotionPlus itself for pointer control instead of the sensor bar, so that control didn't shit itself as badly if the pointer was off screen. In games where I've been aware this was happening, the pointer felt a bit more sluggish, but this could be psychosomatic, I don't know, it works fine. Speaking of things that are just fine, let's talk about Mario Galaxy. Galaxy has pretty limited use of motion control. You shake to attack, you point to collect star bits, and you use motion for some one-off sections which are roundly the most disliked bits in the game, so I'm not going to reflect on them. The attack, as I've heard discussed somewhere before, is great. Mario's spin can be used to reposition just a little on a poor jump, feeding into that urge to shake the controller with vain hope when you fall off a ledge in a platformer. Just for this, I think it's worth having a motion controller here, even if the pointer is useless because the star bits are useless. You could do the spin waggle just fine on a 6-axis though. God, a pedometer could do it. So, sort of neither positive or negative on this one. It gains nothing and loses nothing by being on Wii. Our last major section is minigame collections. I only own 3, even though Wii had more minigame collections than it had games. Wii Sports and Resort, and Rayman Raving Rabbids. From the 40 minutes of Rabbids I could stand to play, at most it requires you to shake the Wii remote at a specific angle, again it can at least tell vertical from horizontal, or it'll have you use the pointer. As a launch title which was converted from a PS2 3D platformer to a multi-platform minigame collection a few months before release, I'm not expecting it to do much more with the technology. Even here though, there weren't any attempts to have the remote do anything too specific. Even at this early stage, the devs seemed to realize the controller couldn't actually be expected to register anything complicated. I have to wonder at what stage of development the on-rails shooter segments were created. Maybe the Ubisoft developers finishing up on Red Steel 1 at the time filled them in on what had worked and what didn't. Wii Sports is, when we're all honest, just as limited. Tennis can distinguish between a forehand and a backhand, and maybe sometimes the force of a swing, and bowling is still pretty solid because playing well is based mostly in rotation rather than sweeping movements, but golf, boxing and baseball are just shit shows. Regardless of what the Wii Remote is actually registering, the moment the movements on the screen don't match the movements of the player, the illusion of one-to-one motion control is ruined. In boxing, this happens when you jab both controllers forward and your character does nothing. In golf, this happens when you try to do a little tiny putt into the hole and your Mii swings his putter back over his head. In baseball, this happens because a 2D image of a ball moving towards you on 3 axes is never going to give you enough information to accurately hit it, even if the Wii Remote itself was sensitive enough, which it isn't. Of course, Wii Sports gets away with this by being hugely good fun as a party game. Apart from maybe bowling, by controlling poorly, all the sports introduce a huge element of luck into activities which are usually based on pure skill. But just like Mario Kart or Party, this just serves to get people riled up, having a good time calling out all the bullshit. Since controls aren't customizable, everyone's movements are stuck as a crapshoot, unless you're a loser who plays a bunch of single player like Dennis. I've never once played a round of boxing that didn't end up in a laughing fit because we were both flailing our controllers around and our Miis were doing absolutely nothing. As a single player game, and as a serious competitive one, Wii Sports is infuriating, but that's probably why it was never played in competition as far as I can tell from googling competitive Wii Sports. None of the single player games I've discussed suggest that you need to accurately simulate a real life movement, except maybe Red Steel. Wii Sports does, simply by being a sports game. As a sports simulation, it's a total failure as a game and as a showpiece for the Wii, but as a product to demonstrate how much more fun local multiplayer is when you both have to wave your arms around like idiots, it's one of the most effective games ever made. I try to separate developer intent from my critique usually, but if I say that you could make a better golf game on the PS4, I'd be missing the point so much that I'd never get the sweater knitted. As the other game controlled by MotionPlus, Wii Sports Resort was the best of both, a fun party game with wild arm swinging and an accurate enough simulator that it could reliably be played competitively. Across all 12 sports here, I never felt the controller was not reliably responding to my inputs. If something went wrong, it was because I had resorted back to something less than an accurate movement in my desperate attempt to be good at something with the word sport attached to it. Some of these sports are better than others, the ones which involve holding the remotes together like handlebars are pretty shit. But as a party game, Resort is still a roaring good time, just with less of the yelling done at the controls this time, and more of it done at your fucking asshole friend who only won because he has way more practice than me. So then why does googling competitive Wii Sports Resort still give you nothing? Well, the fact remains that a lot of these sports involve 3D positioning while only giving you a 2D image. Sinking a basketball just doesn't work that way. You need that sense of depth, and I still couldn't tell you how many dimensions of movement are actually considered by the controller when you shoot for the basket. I'm sure the optimal strategy here wouldn't actually mimic the real-world motion. I chose to buy into the game and lift the remote over my head, but you can just as easily do the same motion 2 centimeters off the floor. The simulation aspect here is not restricted to the same spatial positioning as the real sport, because only the remote is being measured. This doesn't mean the sport can't be competitive as Wii basketball rather than as a simulation of actual basketball. But the moment someone complains that an input was registered incorrectly, regardless of the motion they actually did, you have grounds to blame the game, not the player. When you press square on a gamepad, that input is going to register. Even if I tell you the game was accurate and all my mistakes were my fault, there's just no way to guarantee this. I have absolutely no idea how you could guarantee that, in fact. We've all played some motion-controlled game and called bullshit, until a new controller comes along which no one ever claims to be unreliable, The controls just can't be trusted like you need in a serious competition. The item used to interface with a competition should not in itself affect the outcome. It's a skill to be able to handle a tennis racket, like swinging with the right timing with a Wii remote. But Federer doesn't go around worrying the racket will randomly disappear from his hand when he takes a swing, if you see what I mean. When I started writing this script, I had in my intro that I thought Wii Motion Control was a worthwhile addition to video game controls which has been wrongly left behind. But now, I'm not really feeling it. I expected to enjoy Red Steel 2, but it lives and dies on a novelty that isn't novel anymore. I wanted to say motion could be used for a completely new type of competition which involved wrist movement but not going outside, which I would have fucking killed at, dude. But thinking about Wii Sports really hard tells me that's not happening. The pointer technology probably deserves to stick around in some form. I know a couple homebrew first-person games have released just for the Dolphin emulator, but even just the way I hold a normal controller makes pointing feel like a bit of a chore, as pathetic a complaint as that is. Overall, Wii was a bit shite, eh?